Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Young Israel of San Diego virtual gala honoring the highly esteemed and beloved Rabbi Chaim and Rebbetzin Temi Hollander. I'm honored to be the MC of this evening, and I want to begin by sharing something with all of you. Elul is an interesting month. It's the only one of the Hebrew months in which there are no festivals, no memorial days, no fast days, or days of simcha. This event could have taken place any day, but it took place on the 24th of Elul. And one of our sons, Benjamin, when I told him the date, said, "Hey, Dad, Rabbi Hollander taught us way back in the day school that the 24th of Elul happens to be the yurtzeit of Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, popularly known as the Chafetz Chaim. As we all know, Rabbi Hollander has been teaching us every Shabbos morning for years from the Chafetz Chaim. So on this very auspicious day, we are here to honor and pay tribute to Rabbi and Rebbetzin Temi Hollander. I want to begin by thanking three people and their team as well, which I'll share later, but three people in particular who, without their remarkable, diligent, unbelievable hard work, this event could not have taken place. Number one, not in any particular order, except in one I remember, Marilyn Stern, Lauren Wilson, and then there's another one. Oh yeah, Paula Mantell. If anyone has seen her recently, let her know I'm looking forward to seeing her after this event is over. These three women have been on the phones and have been working so hard, so thank you all. I want to just quickly tell you a story to set the tone. This is not an event of thinking. This is an event of feeling. I'm reminded of a story where a rabbi was traveling with an interfaith group to a foreign country. When they arrived, this group, who had traveled together before, would spend a week together, and then they'd be learning about each other's rituals and sharing prayers together. It was a lovely experience. On Shabbos morning, the rabbi went off on his own to find a shul for Shabbos services. Very few Jews lived in this area. The synagogue was essentially for tourists. So here he was, this rabbi in a synagogue in a foreign country with other Jews, none of whom lived in this city and none of whom knew each other. There wasn't an organized Shabbos service, and people were mostly just davening to themselves and singing their own tunes. The rabbi felt badly that he could not focus on his prayer. At his synagogue at home, of course, that was never an issue. He had begun to feel that the interfaith group that he had spent the week with had more meaning to him than being in this particular synagogue. And he thought about this. What's behind that? And he realized it was about community. Community. For him, for that week, his community was the group that he had come to know, that he had shared with. But what he mostly realized was how much he missed his shul at home and how much he truly missed his community. Young Israel of San Diego is a shul just like that. We welcome all, and we strive to make everyone feel comfortable. This evening, it's all about Rabbi Chaim and Rebbetzin Temi Hollander. I want to share with you a lovely special commendation that the shul received. Here it is. I'm going to read it to you very quickly. Council member Scott Sherman, special combination presented to Rabbi Chaim Hollander on September 13th, 2020. Whereas, they always start with whereas Rabbi Chaim Hollander and his wife Temi have served the San Diego community for over 40 years and moving here with their family in 1980. And whereas Rabbi Hollander's legacy of 21 years as a pulpit rabbi at Young Israel of San Diego will undoubtedly continue despite his retirement, and whereas Rabbi Hollander led as an educator to thousands of children at the San Diego Hebrew Day School and the San Diego Hebrew High School, and whereas during his time as a youth leader Rabbi Hollander guided hundreds of children as the National Council of Synagogue Youth Director at Beth Jacob Congregation for Teens, and whereas Rabbi Hollander went above and beyond his role as a spiritual leader by counseling and supporting hundreds of families through joyous occasions, difficult life situations, and times of grief. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, City Councilman Scott Sherman, do hereby declare Sunday, September 13th, 2020, Elul 24, as Rabbi Chaim Hollander Day, and commend the many contributions made by Rabbi Chaim Hollander to the community on behalf of the proud residents of the 7th District of the City of San Diego. And this includes Allied Gardens, Del Cerro, Grantville, Linda Vista, of Mission Valley, of course, San Carlos, Serra Mesa, and Tierra Santa. Rabbi Hollander, congratulations to you. I'm going to be introducing a number of people who are going to be speaking about their memories of Rabbi Hollander, and I want to share those with you. First up is going to be Rich and Julie Goodwin, who are founding members of Young Israel and represent 2 generations. Their entire family are hardworking Young Israel folks. They're involved in every aspect of shul operations, from Ruby, who serves as the Gabbai, Rich, who was a past president. Julie is involved in everything. Their daughters are Fagi, Shandel, and Zavi, can be relied upon to serve in any capacity needed, and they were all involved in this event. Let's turn it over to them.
I'm humbled to give over some of my personal reflections from my heart. How can 21 years of devoted service be explained as out of the ordinary? You and your family have transpired our Hamish community. That's how. Especially for our kids. I hope I don't get verklempt. Fagi was Penina's fan. Ruby grew from you to be Gabbai and your chavrusa. To us, it gave us such nachas. Shandel has been your learned groupie, Rebbitzin, and chassid in her own right. And Zavi is motivated into another one of your kind chassidim while helping the shul complete projects to get the job done. We have counted on you for unconditional inspiration, chizuk, shilas, humble menschlichkeit. Thank you for the opportunity to host Sheva Brachos for Matos and Zippy and the whole Petruski family in our sukkah. Remember, the police stopped in to make sure that we were not having party animals. When you gave Devar Torahs, it always seemed like you were talking to me personally, and that meant so much to me. Temi, I will miss you at our Suda Shlishit, our Shavakadu, knowing the thrill that you and Penina took in attacking our steps. You will continue to be our warriors. We will miss you terribly, and we will miss the sacred Sukkot invitation and privilege for dinner. We looked forward to that every first night in your sukkah. And Matos, his wild performances on Simchas Torah will never be forgotten. As our celebrated auctioneer on Yom Kippur, no one could have asked for a better performance than you, Rabbi. We will merit and cherish your life lessons. In this unpredictable time, we must continue to see the inconveniences as opportunities and to grow and be closer to our Creator, as you taught us. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Rabbi and Rebbetzin, I want to thank you for the years of inspiration and dedication. I want to say I was with the Rabbi for 21 years during Chakras, and I don't believe he was ever late. I think that's a record that will be not broken by anybody. Part of the unique things that made the Rabbi is not only his knowledge of Yiddishkeit, but all his knowledge of world history and how he could tie that together in classes and in teaching and lessons. We learned about people like Thomas Jefferson, how they related to the Jewish people and what the situations were around the world. And we can't mention that without the walk through the Holocaust and pre-Holocaust that I received through the Rabbi, with stories primarily of his mother and partially his father, but it seemed like we were with his mother during the whole years of this unfortunate event. Also from the Rabbi, I learned the importance of family, the dedication of family, to have a sense of humor. I loved all the Pirkei Avos classes during the summer. One thing that I know I will not match the Rabbi is that I in all those years, I never heard the Rabbi say a bad word about anyone. And I'm sure that in a position of being the Rabbi, that's very difficult to do. So we wish you well. I know that this must be a very difficult time, not being able to be with your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and children. But please God, that will happen soon, and we will be over this pandemic. And we wish you nothing but mazel.
Rabbi Hollander, thank you for making your mark on this institution and the wider Jewish community. The words we've just heard are heartfelt. Your gifts of intellect, warmth, comfort, and your sense of humor, your sensitivity are incredible for our membership, for anyone who visits our community, and for the Mantels. Our connection over the years that we've known each other means the world to all of us, particularly to Don and Ruth Browdy, our next speakers, who represent 3 generations of members of Young Israel, along with their children and their grandchildren, all of whom you, Rabbi Hollander and Rebbetzin Hollander, have touched in one way or another. Also speaking will be Dr. A. Browdy, Tommy Browdy, Yanessa McElfish, and Sarah Boniski. Please.
Myself and the whole family wish just a hearty congratulations and mazal tov for everything that you have imparted, certainly to all of us and to the whole congregation and the whole community.
Rabbi Hollander and Moritemi are daily words in our household, and seldom does a day go by when someone doesn't talk about Rabbi Hollander or Moritemi and refer to them in some lesson that we've learned, or some joke, or some teachings that have come from them.
Rabbi Hollander has a very special way of teaching us about Judaism and Torah and relating it to our everyday lives. You know, whether it was a pasuk from Chumash that I was learning as a kid, or davening with him, or a little piece of Jewish history, or in more recent years, one of his finest sermons at Shul. He had a very unique way of teaching us that left us really inspired and proud of our Jewish heritage.
When I think of Young Israel, And what brought us to Young Israel, of course, again, it was Rabbi Hollander and Mora Temi. They made us feel so comfortable, and Don and I were very impressed by how such a humble abode could really be such a powerhouse of Torah learning. We were always welcomed, and made to feel at home by Rabbi Hollander and Mora Temi. We were Sephardic from our background and our heritage, and they always showed an interest and always made us feel like you fit right in here. It doesn't matter where you're from.
We always had so much fun studying the brachot. With my whole family got involved, me, my siblings, my parents, and we learned not only new brachot, but we learned lots of new Ashkenazi foods that we never knew existed.
When we were invited to the Hollanders to have lunch after Shabbat one day, I want you to know, Mora Temi, that the rice and the baba ganoush on the table did not go unnoticed. Those were things that made us feel comfortable and made us feel like we were really, really welcome.
Mora Temi's main teaching of me occurred at those Shabbats that I spent at her house, where she really showed me exactly what it means to have a Jewish home, a kosher home, and so many little kindnesses that she would do. Knowing my Sephardic background, to this day, I don't think I've ever eaten a meal at the Hollanders where Mora Temi didn't put a little plate of rice or hummus or some kind of Sephardic food on the table there, and it really showed the kindness and sensitivity that the Hollanders have.
I came from two wonderful parents with very, very little religious upbringing. So when we joined Young Israel, there was a certain not fear, but just a trepidation of what's going on. But Rabbi Hollander in particular was absolutely the most comforting guy I've ever met, and as well as so many other members of Young Israel. And that's what I think what has made Young Israel, which has got to be an extension of Rabbi Hollander and Mora Temi, so special in my life.
Before I actually had Rabbi Hollander as a teacher, Rabbi Hollander was our all-time QB on the playground. I think he probably threw me my first touchdown pass. Later in life, he told me that he would spread the ball around and throw it to people that, didn't always catch so well. So that made me feel good at the time. And of course, it was much more than that. Rabbi Hollander was at the heart of our Jewish education, of my Jewish education. So many times when I had some kind of, conundrum or some kind of issue that I was dealing with, I'd go to him to get his opinion. That hasn't stopped. I still go to him to get his opinion and to provide, certainly early on, that kind of moral compass that was needed to make the right decision.
They've been such a constant presence in my life since they came to San Diego when I was in third grade, and I first came to know them at the San Diego Hebrew Day School. Certainly Rabbi Hollander and Mora Temi really gave me the bulk of my Jewish education while at the day school. In the years after my bar mitzvah, I spent many, many Shabbats at the Hollanders as I would be reading the Torah at Beth Jacob. And so I think it must have been several years, I'd be over at their house once every month or so for Shabbat. And it proved to be an invaluable experience, not just because it allowed me to learn how to read Torah well, and that's been a constant presence in my life. And I don't think it would have been ingrained in me if I didn't have the Hollanders to share that experience. But also being at their house for Shabbat really showed me a personal side of them. It showed me the importance of Shabbat.
Rabbi Hollander also, he ran kinder congregation at Beth Jacob. He ran Hebrew High, NCSY. It was basically every step along the way of growing up, Rabbi Hollander was there. And eventually I got married. He wasn't just there, he married me. Eventually I had kids. He wasn't just there. He conducted the Pidyon Haben for our oldest. He taught our children within the last year. Our youngest boy gave him bar mitzvah lessons, and now he's a bar mitzvah with Rabbi Hollander as his teacher.
We all loved, the tradition of going up after services, and 12 children would rush him and just, wish him a Shabbat Shalom or a Happy New Year, whatever it was. And they would share with him what they've learned from school. And he would, always have something wonderful and a way to connect with the children that is very special.
He's famous, legendary for his jokes, always something that we're looking forward to. But he always creates an incredible comfort. That comfort is something we have at Young Israel, and it's been a real joy to have him.
Him and Moritemi embodied the essence of what Judaism is and the Torah means to us. He always left me with a smile on my face and a chuckle because, as we all know, Rabbi Hollander is famous for his jokes. I mean, they're world famous. Rabbi Hollander and Moritemi always welcomed us with open arms.
I've had the good fortune to be involved with Young Israel and continue to learn from the Hollanders and Rabbi's sermons. There's really not ever been a point in my life where the Hollanders have not been that constant Judaic presence. They really have molded, even from such a young age, so much of who I've become as a Jew. And their examples are stellar examples to the community. There's so many hundreds, maybe, I don't even thousands maybe, of Jews now that have been raised by them and taught by them. And their presence is really just permeates the entire San Diego Jewish community. I really can't imagine a San Diego Jewish community without the Hollanders. It's almost one and the same. And so whatever comes next, we wish you the best. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart, from myself and our whole family and our whole community, because there's no words that can express how much you've meant to us. And we love you very much.
I know our kids will miss you, but we wish you all just the very, very best of life and of events coming up in your future, because it's now a different part of your life and of ours. But together, we will both do very, very well, I'm certain.
I feel truly honored and blessed to have had the opportunity to learn with him for so many years. And as one chapter in Young Israel ends and a new one begins, I just want you both to know, Rabbi Hollander and Moritemi, that your voices, your words, they're always in my heart and my mind. And you will always be a huge part of our lives now and going forward. And to me, you'll always be my Rabbi Hollander and you'll always be my Moritemi.
Don and Ruth, Abe, Tommy, Sarah, Inessa, you folks are terrific. You're so eloquent. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared. Because of folks like you, what we have here is very special. Young Israel of San Diego provides a very safe haven from the pressures of the world, and there certainly are plenty. A place where we can develop close friendships and spiritual life, and a way to infuse our lives with a richness that's not found in many other places. This is the time of the year that we reflect on the past year, and we look and we renew our spiritual attachments, including our attachments to each other and to our synagogues. One of the missions that we have behind this event in honoring Rabbi and Rebbetzin Hollander, and I'll share it with you from the website. We were founded in 1989, and we want to continue to be a warm and welcoming congregation that nurtures the religious, educational, and social growth of all of our members, all ages and all backgrounds. Whether the yarmulke is black velvet or knitted in white, it doesn't matter. To erect an eruv and purchase a permanent building and offer programming which meets the needs of our growing membership. In the Gemara in Brachos, it asks, where may the Lord be found? And it answers very clearly, very directly, in the synagogue and study hall. That's where we find the Lord. We also find wonderful people like our dear, dear friend, Mrs. Ruby Wilkes. Ruby has been a longtime member of Young Israel of San Diego. She has shared many family events and life cycle events with our community. Let's hear what Ruby has to say.
My brother was the first of our family to start going to Young Israel of San Diego when there was barely a minyan at the Ben Chaim house.
Strive to do as the Hollanders do, with acts of kindness. They are genuine people. Many years ago, we became neighbors and friends. When the Hollanders came to Young Israel, and we needed a shul to go to, right away we thought, okay, we'll go to Young Israel because of the Hollanders. We were there 20 years. My husband was able to then walk to shul. When his eyesight diminished, the rabbi would send the Parsha class pages in advance so my husband could enlarge the print and then participate in class. Also, Rebbetzin Hollander would let David use her mother, blessed memory, her bencher, for David when his eyesight diminished. Rabbi Hollander encouraged David in many ways, and mostly he wanted him, and David did Haftorahs. He chanted them, he studied, and tried to be flawless at it. He also attended very early morning learning with the rabbi and daily minyan. The Hollanders always put others above their well-being. They go do hospital visits and shopping. They bring food for simchas and shiva. He always told the men that they should help with household responsibilities, sharing with the children as well. And he always said, remember to say thank you. Rebbetzin Hollander had her students in school say Tehillim when our family needed it, more than one time, I must say. The rabbi always remembers everybody to be grateful and to say thank you, even to your spouse. Rebbetzin is most respectful of the rabbi. She attended his classes. She told of kosher new products and shared sugar-free recipes. She also joined our ladies' walking group. Rabbi wrote letters of reference for me and for my aliyah. He wrote a letter attesting to his knowledge of my family for over 30 years and my Jewish status. He also taught some of my children at the day school. I remember Temi doing the Rosh Chodesh women's program and also on Shabbat afternoons leading the women's circle for Tehillim. Highlights of my 20 years at Young Israel include the rabbis telling for the holidays customs and laws, discussing about the Parsha of the week. It was a delight to get to know the Hollanders, whether in San Diego or in Israel. Rabbi's jokes at Kiddush were memorable. Some of the highlights of our years at Young Israel include life cycle events, baby naming, anniversaries, and special birthdays. I appreciate their friendship. I hope they will be blessed to enjoy retirement together for many years to come. And I also hope that Rabbi Rosenberg and the shul will thrive.
I guess our next speaker was a little eager. He jumped in there. But before you get to your turn, let me just share something important. And I want to thank Ruby Wilkes for your eloquent words as well. Again, very heartfelt. As you can see, this is an evening about heart. Not much thinking, a lot of feeling. Our members can look back with pride over what's been accomplished. In 1988, when the Ziffs and the Shermans and the Tiranis shared a vision with Rabbi Breitowitz and Rabbi Korobkin, they built the foundation of where we sit today. Along with them, a number of other families joined in that vision, including the Ben Chaims and the Myers and the Sonnabends and the Kuglers and the Magains and the Winters and the Weisses and the Barlowskis and the Wachtels and the Berkowitzes and the Goodwins. And shortly thereafter, Young Israel grew out of their space, and the minyan moved across the street, only to face the same blessing a number of years later. And in 2002, when Young Israel moved into its present location, so Rabbi Snyder took over from Rabbi Korobkin, and then 20 years later, Rabbi Hollander took over from Rabbi Snyder. And here we are. Well, you saw our next speaker, Dr. Mark Stern, who with his mom and sister have been members of Young Israel San Diego for many, many years. And they've all been taught by their Rebbe, Rabbi Hollander. Okay, Dr. Stern, it's your turn.
My brother was the first of our family to start going to Young Israel of San Diego when there was barely a minyan at the Ben Chaim house. When I came home that summer from Yeshiva High School, my brother and I walked to Young Israel together almost every Shabbat. I remember always feeling very welcomed within a warm and close community from the beginning. And as Young Israel of San Diego grew over the years, that warmth from a close-knit community continues to reflect the personality of the congregation. When Rabbi Hollander became the rabbi, Young Israel of San Diego became my shul rather than the shul I attended. The Hollanders have been a part of our life since my sister and I were students at the San Diego Hebrew Day School. Rabbi Hollander taught me how to daven, the joy of learning Gemara, and how our history is tied to who we are. It was Rabbi Hollander that inspired me to continue my education in a yeshiva environment. And that love of learning continues even today as I bond with my father over discussing his weekly rabbinical messages to his congregation. Throughout my life, my Yiddishkeit will always bring the Hollanders to mind. I have so many positive memories with the Hollanders, like when Rabbi Hollander taught me to put on tefillin, or when the Rebbitzin made kishka for me just because I had never tried it before. It was delicious, by the way. My fondest memory, though, isn't necessarily a memory about them directly. It's more of a collection of memories of me saying my rabbi and referring to Rabbi Hollander whenever it was relevant in conversation. When you move around as much as I do, it means a lot to have a constant in your life. And I've gone to a lot of different shuls, I've encountered different communities, and met a lot of different rabbis. One of the only constants in my life was the Hollanders. Rabbi Hollander was and still is my Rebbe. Saying my rabbi each time, accompanied by all the memories that made such a relationship, is more meaningful to me than any individual experience. I believe that what made the Hollanders such great teachers and such a great asset to the shul was more than just what they did, but who they are. They are dedicated, compassionate, and non-judgmental to everyone with whom they interact. They don't just teach the laws of Judaism. They show us what it means to be Jewish and live by our values. No matter where I am, I think of San Diego as my home, Young Israel as my shul, and Rabbi Hollander as my Rebbe. On behalf of my brother, Alan, my sister, Natalie, and my mother, Marilyn, I'd like to thank you, Rabbi and Rebbitzin Hollander, and wish you good health and happiness in the next chapter of your lives.
Our challenge, of course, is to continue growing, never retreating. And with members like the Stern family, I know it will happen. Thank you so much, Dr. Stern. We're always moving, we're always growing. The trick is, how do we accomplish this? Well, I want to share a quick little story with you. Rabbi, the mother asks, you officiated so many bar mitzvahs. How are you still able to make each one feel special and the most important person at that moment? Because the rabbi knows how to leave people feeling cared for and feeling important. The rabbi smiles and says, yeah, I've done a lot of bar mitzvahs. And he motions to her to step a little closer, and he whispers his secret. He says, it isn't about surviving all those services. It's about kfelling for each child. That's what Rabbi Hollander teaches us. In a world today that teaches us it's all about being happy, Rabbi Hollander has taught us that the Torah says that we should strive to be holy. In a world that teaches us that it's all about making a dollar, about getting rich, the Torah says money's okay. But Rabbi Hollander has taught us that what we've been given is to enrich the lives of others. And in the world that teaches us it's all about me, social media, the rabbi teaches us that the Torah says it's about emet, truth, tzedek, justice, and ava, love, and so that we can create a community of shalom, peace. And thank you for that teaching, Rabbi Hollander. Our next speaker is Mrs. Liat Malka, who's also a longtime member of Young Israel San Diego, and a colleague of Rabbi Hollander at the San Diego Hebrew Day School, where she also teaches. She's speaking for the Israeli members of our community and our congregation.
Thank you, Rabbi Hollander, for all the years you've been with us and for serving the community.
Thank you, Rabbi Hollander, for being such an amazing teacher and being a great rabbi.
Rabbi Hollander, thank you for inspiring all of us. Thank you for always welcoming us to the community, always making us feel welcome, no matter what background, what we have, what we don't, who we know, what we know. You've always made us feel like we are a part of everything, and we cannot thank you enough. Thank you for leading life as an example for all of us to follow. Many, many, many years ago, and I keep going back to that. It's a lesson for life. Way before I became a mother, I heard you say at shul that we should not expect our children to do what we say. We should expect them to do what we do. And I think this was probably one of the best lessons that I could have learned as a mother, as a teacher. And I am honored to have learned it from you and to lead my life with that lesson in mind. We have been co-teachers for over 20 years. I cannot thank you enough for everything that you've done for my children, everything you've done for our school, and most certainly everything you've done for our community and the shul. Thank you for everything, Rebbitzin, Rabbi. Thinking of you leaving, I think back to the time, to when you became our rabbi to begin with, over 20 years ago, when I was expecting our first child. And thinking back to that moment, I realized that you became the rabbi just in time to welcome Omri as your first pidyon haben for our community. And that was probably a memory I will take forever with me. And I know it's impacted the rest of us into understanding that this community is the one that we want to belong to. And it is definitely thanks to you and Rebbitzin that we made that choice. We cannot thank you enough for it. Lots of nachat, Bezat Hashem. Everything should go well. And God willing, we should always see each other in smachot. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of you for being there this evening. We thought it was just going to be Liat. But, I wonder how many of us were taken aback when a number of months ago, Rabbi Hollander announced to us that he was going to be retiring this past summer. We feel especially grateful to you, Rabbi Hollander and Rebbitzin Hollander, for the midos that you have exemplified, how you have lifted us all up. In every step that you take, you've lifted us up. You've shown extraordinary leadership, vision, and we know that you will always be a blessing to our community. One of the things that you've talked about, Rabbi Hollander, is the importance of an Eruv. And that's something that the Shul, Young Israel of San Diego, Mirz Hashem, is building. And, we can say it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's a line in the sky. But that line in the sky allows us to live by the definition of where the word eruv comes from. The word from the Hebrew word for mixture or integration. And if there's two words that describe our community, it's mixture and integration. We welcome everyone. I want to now turn over to Robert and Claire Siegel, who spearhead so many activities in our synagogue and who have known Rabbi Hollander and Rebbitzin Hollander for many, many years. Robert was a past president, and Claire, of course, there's very little that goes on in the synagogue that Claire doesn't touch. Let's turn it over to Robert and Claire Siegel.
Hello, I'm Robert Siegel. I'm past president of Young Israel, and I met the Hollanders when I first moved into the community in 2001. Actually, my first visit to Young Israel was in 1995. I was still living in Texas, and I was just smitten by this community. And then by the time I was finally able to move into the community, Rabbi Hollander had also moved here. And I developed a very close bond with Rabbi and Rebbitzin Hollander. Rabbi Hollander was there for me. Well, first I was on the board, then I served 2 terms as president. But when I became president, I had no idea what a president was supposed to do. I needed some serious leadership skills. And Rabbi Hollander was there, and the Rebbitzin too. And what I liked is sometimes I would go over to the rabbi's house to get some coaching. I get the coaching, but I'd also get a special gift, some of Bubby's meatloaf. The Rebbitzin's mother made this amazing meatloaf. And to this day, when the Hollanders invite us over for Shabbos lunch, the Rebbitzin serves me Bubby's meatloaf. They've really been with us for all of our life events. The passing of both of our mothers, various crises in the family, but the thing I'm most grateful to Rabbi and Rebbitzin for is helping me meet my wife and marry her. There's a few hurdles along the way, and the Hollanders were there. It was a whirlwind, to say the least, and they were just so happy to see me get married that they literally dropped everything to help us make that wedding happen. The greatest thing the Hollanders taught me is to never embarrass somebody. They have a very kind disposition, and just by watching the two of them, in fact, Rabbi Rosenberg would talk about that a lot when he would cover for Rabbi Hollander during his vacations. He always say, here's something in this week's Torah Parsha, and a great example of that is Rabbi and Rebbitzin Hollander. Even when the rabbi wasn't here, he was here. Probably one of my fondest memories of Rabbi Hollander is we got to know him first as a rabbi, then we got to become his neighbor, and so it was fantastic being a neighbor. And I especially enjoyed walking to shul on Shabbos with the rabbi, and we would talk about everything. Sometimes there were things in the Parsha I didn't understand. Sometimes there were things in history that kind of confused me. And then even baseball, because one of the things I found very appealing about Rabbi Hollander was, like me, he was Baal Teshuvah, so he understood the path that I had to take. And also, the changes that come with being Baal Teshuvah. For example, with him, he was on his way to a very exciting career as a baseball pitcher, and he gave it all up because he wanted to be Shabbos observant. And that really resonated to me. It really helped me go further in my observance. As I mentioned, the first time I visited the community, I was just smitten. But probably the best example of what our community is like was my wedding plans with Claire. I gave Claire exactly 1 week notice. I proposed to her, and I told her, look, your mother's flying back to New York, but she's very sick right now. Why don't we get married before your mother's flight? And we made all this happen in a week, but it wasn't just an ordinary week. It was a week that had 2 days of Shavuos in the middle. And at the end of Shavuos, we learned that our caterer's restaurant had burned down. And this entire community rallied to make sure that we had food for the wedding, a family meal, and especially Rabbi Rosenberg and Rebbitzin Rosenberg. They really stepped up to help us with all the plans after the wedding. Initially, we planned to have the wedding inside Rabbi Hollander's house, which she was so... and the Rebbitzin, they were very eager to offer their house, but so many people felt left out when we were going to do a small wedding. So our small wedding, literally with 2 days planning, turned into 110 people. And the Hollanders were just fantastic at making that happen. Rabbi Hollander was fantastic to me in my development spiritually, my development as a leader of the shul. But also, I think he really helped several presidents get cemented in their job. And so I'd like to acknowledge some of the fantastic presidents we've had serve at Young Israel. So during Rabbi Hollander's times, it was started first with Rich Goodwin, then with Ed Fetterman, then myself, Steve Kamolik, then myself, and Gunther Cohn. And then before that, at the very beginning, we also had Mr. Sherman and Yossi Zeff. But these guys were fantastic presidents. I just have to say that we had another gentleman who really wanted to become president. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to fulfill that dream. But he was always so eager to help me when I was president. That would be David Wilkes. What a wonderful mention. And you'll be hearing more from his wife, Ruby, in just a moment. But what a loss to our community when we lost David Wilkes. But that was the kind of people we had in the community and still have in the community that really drew me here.
Mazel tov to Young Israel on this milestone of a 31st anniversary. And may we continue to celebrate for many more years to 120 and beyond. I came to this community in 2009, so about 11 years ago, and I wanted to be closer to where I was working. And fortunately, I had some friends, Dorita and Eugene Gottlieb, who were longstanding members and supporters of Young Israel. They've moved to Los Angeles now. But Dorita and Eugene said to me, I need to live near Young Israel, and of course go to Young Israel. And within a week of moving here, the Gottliebs made sure that I attended Rabbi Hollander's weekly Parsha class. And that had me hooked. As soon as I was there, not only did I learn a great deal, but I enjoyed just the social aspect of being with this wonderful community. And of course, fast forward a few years later, Robert, who was the president of Young Israel, seemed like an interesting kind of guy. So we were going out, and one day I said to Rabbi Hollander, Rabbi, you know, I've been seeing Robert and wondering if perhaps things need to move forward a little bit, or perhaps I should break it off. So Rabbi Hollander said in his usual way, I think I'll talk to Robert and I will be getting back to you. Well, of course, about a week later, I don't know what Rabbi said to Robert. Robert will have to tell you that. But the next thing I know, Robert's saying that why don't we get married? It was the most amazing wedding to have in 1 week, thanks to the wonderful community here at Young Israel. Robert and I fortunately moved into this home 6 years ago, and as we were moving into this home, we asked Rabbi Hollander, what shall we do to have a welcoming, a Hanukkah Chabayit? And of course, as always, Rabbi Hollander guided us into how to have a meaningful Hanukkah Chabayit, to be putting on mezuzot, have a beautiful kosher Suda. And so it was always with the guidance of the rabbi and the rebbitzin on how to have simcha, how to extend ourselves to the community, and we've always felt that way. There are times when the rabbis said to us, why don't we have a movie night and invite people over and just make it an engaging evening. Rabbi would select a very interesting movie. One was, I think, on the life of Rashi, and Rabbi Hollander would provide us with some additional background information. We enjoyed the time together. And of course, with Rebbitzin Temi, I can't say enough about Rebbitzin Temi. She has been a role model for me in many ways, in the way she's just gracious and having us in her home. There was a year where we learned together. I came over once a week to her house, and we had a book that we learned together, and just to observe the relationship that she has with Rabbi, it helped me as basically, quote, a newlywed with Robert to have the role model of Rebbitzin Temi. So again, mazel tov to Young Israel, and I want to wish the very best to Rabbi and Rebbitzin Hollander on their future plans. And of course, we're very excited and look forward to our new leadership with Rabbi Eddie Rosenberg. Thank you.
Robert and Claire, thank you so much. So much information and such a heartfelt expression of gratitude and a description of so many people who have helped build Young Israel of San Diego. We are blessed to be where we are. We know we're looking for a new home, and we will find a new home, but it will be in the San Carlos area. You know, San Diego Magazine recently listed the best neighborhoods in which to live, and San Carlos was number 5. Think about it. A little less than 4 square miles, surrounded by Cowles Mountain, almost 1,600 feet to the top, surrounded by the beautiful Lake Murray, surrounded by Mission Trails Park. Doesn't get much better than that. What a place to live. We have condos and apartments and single family homes and all sorts of rentals and homes in the $650 range for sale. I'm not a real estate agent, but I am encouraging people who are looking for a residence in San Diego to understand that San Carlos has so much to offer. One of the beautiful things that we have to offer is our new rabbi, Rabbi Eddie Rosenberg, who was a student of Rabbi Hollander's at the San Diego Hebrew Day School and was the assistant rabbi for a number of years and did so much for the shul during the week and on Shabbosim, and now continues as the new rabbi. Let's ask Rabbi Rosenberg to say a few words.
The first time I met Rabbi Hollander, I was about 6 years old, and I was going to the Hebrew day school, and I still remember the first thing my mother said when she saw him. She said, "Ata nastayashi ravin." This is a real rabbi, and in my experience, I've seen what she means by that, and that is he's the essence of honesty, of ethics, of care for other people, and so I've always admired that about him. He's been sort of almost like a father for us. As soon as I met my wife, one of the first things we did when I brought her to San Diego, I brought her to the Hollanders, and the Hollanders came to us as guests eventually when we got married, and the Rebbetzin Hollander said about my wife, she's a real bulabusta, she's a real homemaker. It was quite a compliment. It was a compliment that we've kept we remember very fondly. The Rebbetzin Penina would always call Vicky for the longest time. We were the youngest couple in San Diego. She would call Vicky the Kala for quite a while. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And we moved to this community to live closer to the Hollanders. We admire them very much, and we've learned a lot from them.
We've often come to them for advice on many occasions about many different things. They've been very helpful with making things more clear for us to be able to make important decisions in our lives.
Right. In terms of parenting, in terms of financial ideas, everything. They've given a lot of advice, and they've been great hosts. We've eaten at their home many times. Delicious recipes. Our plan for this community is to extend what the rabbi has already established here, and that is a very Hamish, very loving family sort of community where everybody cares about each other and there aren't cliques and politics, and that's what we want to continue. It's very difficult for a rabbi to establish that kind of community. I'm very lucky to be going into a community where that's already the case. It's bittersweet to see the rabbi retiring in many ways, but we definitely wish the best for him as he continues.
We hope and pray that Rabbi and Rebbetzin stays within our communities to lend us a hand and grow this beautiful community, and wish them the best in everything for years to come.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Eddie, and Mazel Tov to you. This is our synagogue. This is our community. There's no better way to integrate yourself into the community than by being involved, engaged, and immersed. And we invite and encourage all to build on the legacy that Rabbi Hollander and Rebbetzin Hollander have built here for more than 2 decades. We owe them our involvement. Our next speaker is a man that I've been privileged to know for many, many years. I served as president of the San Diego Hebrew Day School very proudly for about 12 or 13 years, I think it was. Rabbi Simcha Weiser is a headmaster of the San Diego Hebrew Day School, a colleague and very close friend of Rabbi and Rebbetzin Hollander. And he's going to be delivering the keynote in tribute of the Rabbi and Rebbetzin this evening.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to join the Young Israel community and the entire San Diego community in paying tribute to Rabbi Chaim and Temi Hollander for their 21 years of leadership to the Young Israel of San Diego. You know, since Rabbi Hollander has retired as the Rav, it's just not as much fun to speak about him anymore. Because we all know that as a community, we always enjoy speaking about our rabbis whenever we get the chance. But it is my pleasure tonight to say a few words in tribute. Not specifically thinking about Rabbi Chaim and Temi Hollander. Just a thought. A student asked me recently, Rabbi Weiser, who's the oldest Jewish person you have ever met? I was wondering if they were thinking about me, but I thought for a moment and I said, I'll tell you who that person is. It's Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who really lives all the way through Jewish history. And as we know, we get to see him at least once a year when he comes to our home for the Passover Seder, takes a little sip of wine and goes on his way. And hopefully with Simchas we get to see him more often at the Brit. What is it about Eliyahu Hanavi that gives him this perpetual, eternal association with the Jewish people? But before we address that, one other thought. Although he is the Jewish person who is older than any other I've ever encountered, I have to confess he's never said a word to me. I have clear memories as a little boy running to the door and opening it up on the Pesach Seder and then running back to the table to just see that little sip being taken from the cup. I certainly remember placing babies on the Kisei Shel Eliyahu, on the chair of Elijah the prophet at a bris. But again, no comment, nothing to be heard. And that explains a lot as to why Eliyahu remains in our lives today. You see, because at the peak of his influence, Eliyahu decided, I want to do something with tremendous fanfare. I want to do something that will capture the attention and the interest of the Jewish people like nothing ever before has. And he set up this encounter on Har Carmel in the north of Israel. And all the leaders of the idols gathered together. And he had this whole ceremony going on. And it was so moving and so exciting and so dramatic that at the end, everyone shouted out together in belief, in unison, of acceptance of God's sovereignty. But then what happened? Then the fanfare quieted down, and Eliyahu realized there wouldn't be much lasting impact or effect in spite of all the amazing display of God's presence in the world. Eliyahu was broken. And in fact, not long after, he exited physically from the world, but he remained silently interacting with us on so many special occasions. What did Eliyahu himself learn? And what did he speak about afterwards? That the true voice of Hashem is a kol dimama daka, a quiet voice, a still voice, one that you have to tune into. But when you hear it, it resonates within you. You realize there's truth. You realize that it's talking to all the better angels and the greatness within you, and it's awakening that within you. And this idea brings us to Rabbi Chaim and Temi Hollander, because they are not people of fanfare and drama. They are people who speak quietly, and yet their voices are always heard. Their presence is always felt. And their impact is something that we can see lastingly etched onto the community. And at the conclusion of 21 years of leadership for Young Israel, and I think Rabbi Hollander is about halfway through his tenure of teaching at Hebrew Day, so we certainly have much more to look forward to. Every graduation, it's Rabbi Hollander's name that's called out most by these young students who are bedazzled by social media all day long. But when it comes time to them remembering what's important, it's Rabbi Hollander's lessons and voice that stays with them. It's the teaching that Moratemi did year after year, and the quiet, modest example she sets, which reshapes the environment. And especially today, so much chaos, so much out of control. Everyone's looking for a gravitational center that they can hold on to. And I know from the day that Rabbi and Mrs. Hollander arrived in San Diego with their very young family at the time, through today, and please God for the foreseeable future, they've been that center of gravity that has pulled people together. Every decision they make seems to include everyone as being important and that everyone counts. And no greater tribute could be made for leadership. And of course, we take pride in Rabbi Rosenberg, a graduate of Hebrew Day, succeeding Rabbi Hollander and carrying on. And we have to look forward as well to the future of young Israel, that we should see the Eruv built, we should see families continue to move in, we should see a new building of its own emerge out of tribute to the importance of this voice that doesn't make a lot of noise, but that reaches so deeply, deeply within each of us, and which is recognized by young and old alike. We're looking forward to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we know those words, Hashem Hu Elokim. We end Yom Kippur with the very words that display of God's miraculous power elicited on Har Carmel. Hashem, God, is in fact Lord. That's what the tribute is here. And from within the holiness of young Israel of San Diego, this feeling has gone out quietly and it has brought people in. Please God, it should continue in the voices of Rabbi Hollander and Mrs. Hollander for years and years to come. And it should resonate as we see the young Israel community flourish. And let's all get behind supporting it, nurturing it, and seeing it become a deeper and deeper fixture in the success of our community. Best wishes for a healthy new year to all of us, and special best wishes to Rabbi Chaim and Temi Hollander. They should continue to see tremendous nachas within their own family and tremendous gratification in seeing our community go forward from strength to strength. Have a good evening. Thank you for being here.
We will always be together. We're all one family. Kol Yisroel, Kol Yisroel, Chaverim. Kol Yisroel, Chaverim. Kol Yisroel, Chaverim. Kol Yisroel, Kol Yisroel, Chaverim. Kol Yisroel,
everyone. Welcome to this special evening. I'm Rabbi Hollander. This is my Rebbitzin, Temi Hollander. And we've been here at the Young Israel for 21 years. It's been a wonderful 21 years, I have to admit. When we came here 21 years ago, I wasn't sure what I was going to be facing. I didn't know too many people. I said what we were getting ourselves into. But I will tell you that it's been a very special time. I want to thank the congregation. I want to thank the community for giving us the opportunity to be able to work with you and to get nachas from the community as well. We've seen so much growth, not just numbers-wise, which certainly has been numbers growth, but also quality as well. Quality in our own lives, my wife and myself, quality in the shul itself, all the wonderful things we've seen, from the people. We've made some wonderful friendships. I hope that even though I'm no longer the rabbi of the synagogue, I certainly hope we maintain those friendships because they're very special. There's nothing more special than a good friend, and that we're certainly thankful for. I want to thank the community for welcoming our children and our whole family, and everyone, all our children, everyone felt very, very comfortable. When the grandchildren, it certainly added life to the shul, but some people may have thought that it was a little too life, but I think that, yeah, everyone certainly remembers our son Matis on Simchat Torah, but he certainly enlivened things there, and just thank you so much, and it's been a wonderful 21 years. Thank you very much.
Rabbi and Rebbetzin and Rabbi Weiser, your words are remarkable. And as always, they always touch us in the most meaningful way. With the help of all of you folks who are watching coast to coast, Canada, Israel, all throughout San Diego, with your help, we will be able to not only carry out the fine traditions that Rabbi and Rebbetzin Hollander have established, but we will be able to take their inspiration, build their legacy, and reach new and greater heights. These days of awe, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, are a gift to us, a chance for us to look back at our lives, a chance for us to examine the ways that we've gone on autopilot and have forgotten that we have choices, and we make those choices every day, even during this Meshuggah time of the pandemic. We have a choice about how do we want to act and how we want to think and how we want to live our lives. That choice has been taught to us by Rabbi Hollander for more than 20 years, and through the day school for almost 40 years. He's taught us life and Torah. May we all choose well. I want to thank a number of people who have helped put this evening together. Lauren Wilson, Paula Mantell, Marilyn Stern, Julie Goodwin, Ian Kuttner, and I want to thank our speakers, Julie and Rich Goodwin, the magnificent Browdy family, Ruby Wilkes, Mark Stern, Liat Malka, Robert and Claire Siegel, Rabbi Rosenberg, of course, and the very impressive and impactful Rabbi Simcha Weiser, and of course, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Hollander. Two people have helped put this thing together technically, and that is Rich Levitas of Wizad Journal, and someone who I've come to rely on a great deal for all the technical skill of putting all this together, and that is Will Zauscher. Thank you, folks, very much. Before we leave, I want to leave on a very special note. I'm honored to be able to present this to Rabbi and Rebbetzin Hollander. I want to read it. Presented to Rabbi Chaim and Hollander and Rabbi Rebbetzin, Temi Hollander, in recognition of their humility, their wisdom, and their love for our entire San Diego Jewish community, with acknowledgement of our high esteem and reverence for both of you, in appreciation for the Kiddush Hashem that you perform in the way that you live your lives, and to convey Hakaras Hatov, gratitude that we feel to the Borei Olam for placing the two of you in our midst. Rabbi and Rebbetzin Emeritus of Young Israel of San Diego presented this 24th day of Elul 5780. Thank you all very, very much. One more song. Thanks very much for joining us.
You're amazed at his life of simplicity, how his words reach you with sensitivity, and your eyes recognize as never before that the dream